Today I'm going to show you how to adjust the rear brake shoes on a 2001 Toyota Sienna. The range on this vehicle is 1998 to 2003, but it probably applies, the principles apply to other vehicles as well. The brakes on this vehicle were really bad. How do I know that? Because I could put the emergency brake on and come up with the car jacked up, and I could take my hand and just turn the wheel like that, and without too much pressure it would spin. It was holding a little bit, but barely at all. Remember too that little test of spinning the wheel with your emergency brake on, it's a good way of figuring out the rear brakes, because the emergency brake really for a lot of cars only works on the rear brakes. Brake shoes on this vehicle, like many other vehicles, are supposed to be self-adjusting, which means as the brake shoe wears, there's a self-adjusting part in there that continues to allow the brake to move outward towards the drum so that you continue to get great braking power. In my case, that didn't work. There's something wrong with the self-adjusting mechanism, or maybe somehow these got so far out of alignment that they no longer worked anymore. So I had to look at it another way, and so I Googled and really didn't find too much out there talking about how to self-adjust because they're supposed to be, or manually adjust because they're supposed to be self-adjusting. But what I did find is that there's some little adjustment screw in there, so I thought I'd pull my tire off and look for it. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. So it's easier to explain this if I show you an example of how this adjustment works. It's basically a screw like this that screws in and out. And so if you screw it in, the distance between here shortens, and you can think of it inside the brake mechanism that this is firmly attached to one shoe and this is firmly attached to another shoe. So when you screw this in and make the distance shorten, you're actually pulling the brake shoes away from the drum and making your braking power worse. If you go the opposite direction and screw it out, you're going to push those shoes closer to the drums, and that's what I'm trying to do right here, is to show you how to make this adjustment and push it out further so you get better braking power. This particular vehicle, this orientation is actually correct for the screw. And I'm on the right hand side of the car too, and that's important. So when you screw in or screw out, for this particular one, if you want to push those shoes out, of course you're going to go this direction, around like that. And if you're on the opposite side of the car, on the left hand side, this screw is still going to be pointed to the back of the car, but because you're on the opposite side, it's going to look like you're rotating it in the opposite direction. For instance, if you're trying to use the adjuster notched wheel on this thing to make this thing go in this direction, which is what I want to do to tighten my pads up, I want to push down from the front and turn it this direction. Whereas on the left hand side, I'm actually pushing from the bottom and trying to rotate it back the other direction. So they don't make a left-handed and right-handed screw. Screws are all the same, but you'll have to go in the opposite direction on the opposite side of the car. So I've got the tire off now, and we're looking at the brake drum, which is still on. And there's a couple ways to make this adjustment. If you want to adjust it from the outside without having to pull off the drum, you can actually access the adjustment through this little rubber port right here, which you pull this rubber thing out, and then that should give you the exact location where you push in with a screwdriver or another tool, and you can actually turn that adjustment screw inside there by fitting it into the little notches and pushing it around. And I'm going to show that thing to you once I pull the drum off so you can get a better look at it. And once you've adjusted it on here adequately, you're basically going to turn that adjustment knob until it pushes all the way out and presses up against the drum with enough friction so that you can barely turn the drum anymore. And then you're pretty tight, and then you kind of back off. You back off a few clicks on a little bit of a turn on that adjustment screw in there, and then you're good to go. Looks like on the inside you got your one brake shoe here, you got other brake shoe right there. Taking the drum off. This right underneath this spring right here is this little elongate thing, which is the adjuster screw. And right about here you can see this little notched wheel, which has got little notches in it that you can actually get a screwdriver or another tool on and turn that. And so the directions that I instructed you on with that example screw is exactly what you're going to do to that, and that's going to either screw in or out. And you can actually see the threads between the wheel and the other side there, which is kind of what the nut was in my example. This guy, the self-adjustment part is this little piece that sticks along here, and it kind of catches the edges of the notches on the wheel right there, and it's kind of stuck up against there, and that's an R because I'm on the right hand side of the car right now. Before previously, when I had the drum on, you can actually access through that little rubber port when these holes are exactly aligned with it, and you can reach in and then effectively you can see my fingers going through to where that little notched wheel is, and you can get a tool in there. You're going to have a hard time reaching the top of it. Maybe you can reach that, but you're going to have an easier time hitting along the bottom of it. Let me see if I can get the camera underneath there and see that. Maybe you can see that, maybe you can't. One of the reasons why I wanted to adjust mine with having the drum off is because I wasn't sure how hard it's going to be to turn that wheel, and I didn't want to strip those little notches on there for fear that it would mess up the self-adjusting mechanism, assuming that's going to start working again once I get this in the better adjustment. I've already adjusted this and got it just right, but just to prove to you that I can do this, I'm going to take a little angled screwdriver here and stick it in here, and I'm going to put it inside the notch. I'm going to get that seated inside the notch there. You might be able to see that. And now I'm just going to turn it a little bit, and hopefully you're going to see that wheel turn a little bit. And there it goes. I turned it a bit. Now I'm just going to back it off and go the opposite direction and seat it on this side right here and turn that a little bit. You can see it slips a little bit. It's not too bad. So that's how you adjust the thing. And again, I'm on the right hand side of this car for a 2001 Toyota Sienna, and to get that thing to push the pads out, you want to push down on the front side of that wheel so that it pushes the pads out. One other thing, if you're going through this port down here, here's another tool that you might want to have something like this, like a paint lid removal right here that's got a nice 90-degree edge on it here, so you can reach in on this thing and either tug or push, because remember, you're going to have to be able to go both directions on this thing once you get it too far and back it off. One more thing, it's like, so how hard is it to turn this wheel in here? You know, it might have been a little harder than I originally thought, and maybe it loosened up the further I went on it. You might want to spray that thing a little bit. I know I sprayed it with brake cleaner, and maybe that helped to turn it a little bit. I'm not going to adjust this through the port right here. You're going to do it the way I did, which is just completely with the drum off, which is over here on the ground. You know, I kind of had to go through an iterative process where I would make the adjustments on here and move it out further, and then I would pick up the drum and I put it back on and see if it fit, and I kept adjusting it out more and more and more until I could barely squeeze the drum on, or maybe even went a little bit too far, at which point then I just backed it off, and then I knew I had it just about right. I think I have this car pretty well adjusted. There's the emergency brake right there. One thing I did was I counted the number of clicks that it takes to, you can hear that a little bit, to push it all the way into the bottom, and I think to go all the way to the bottom is about 10 clicks. And right now with it adjusted the way it is, where it's pretty much perfect, I can go about 5 clicks before it starts to engage, and then about 7 clicks before it fully can hold the car. Now I've taken this car up on a steep hill, and this definitely is working good, and it's adjusted, and it held me on probably a 20% grade without any problem. The problem with the self-adjustment on this car, I'm going to be watching it, and the mechanism I'm going to use to figure out whether it's out of balance or not, or losing its braking power, is I'm going to keep coming back here and I'm going to count the number of clicks on this emergency brake, and when I find it's starting to hold me less, and maybe I'm down at the bottom, or I'm down at 8 or 9 clicks, then I know that I'm starting to get out of adjustment, and hopefully it'll stay in adjustment, and that auto adjust mechanism will be better now that it's closer to being in line. One other nuance about putting the drum back on again so that you can actually use this port correctly is there's a correct orientation to get it on here. You can see that the little hole on here is a little bit closer to one nut screw than it is bolt than it is to the other side, and you can see right here that's the one you want to match it up, because again this is a little bit closer to that side. But I'll show you another example right here. So this one's actually closer to this side. So if I was to put it on like this, you'd be looking at you'd be looking at half metal trying to look through this hole, through this port right here. So if you're trying to make that work, it's like, and you take this off the first time and you're seeing metal, well then you know you got to pull the drum off and put it back on again and line it up properly, at least on this vehicle. Showing you what it looks like through the little port right now when you got it lined up right, and you can see the bottom of that little notched wheel through the port. So that's the end of this video. Hope this helps you out.